early on, what started kind of my career was literally one conversation. So I'm 17 years old. I'm working after school in this after school program, and it's about 10 to 12 of them in a circle, and their age range from 7 to 12, 13 years old, right? Mm-hmm. What do you want to be when you grow up? Going around the circle. I want to be an actress. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a football player. And then I got to one young brother, and he said, I want to be a pimp just like my uncle. They make lots of money. They drive bad cars, and they get all the girls. Like, he was 10 years old. And so I said, okay, I hear you. I said, let's talk about some positive ways, dude. And right then and there, I decided this is what I want to do. He became my project.
Peace, and welcome to another episode of Cook on Monday Morning. At Cook on Monday Morning, we are building lives that make us excited about Monday morning. We believe that if we can own Monday morning, we can own the week. If we can own the week, we can own the year. And if we change our year, we can change our lives. So this week I have on probably the most successful Black man to ever be born in San Francisco. Graduate of our public schools, leader and friend and supporter of multiple important causes. We're going to get into some of his career. Mr. Eric McDonnell also is an incredible singer. I don't know if we'll get the opportunity to hear any of that today, but this is an interesting time in the country, and I know he, through his work in nonprofit and corporate America, has seen a lot and heard a lot and impacted a lot throughout his career. So I'm planning to learn a lot. I appreciate your time, Mr. McDonnell. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate all the work you're doing, all your leadership, and yeah, I love being in this space with you.
We are like a week out of the presidential election. The transition, I guess, is happening, but maybe it's not. You know, where are you at right now with thinking about, is Trump going to leave? Like, what a Biden administration means? What are your general sentiments right now?
Right. No, I appreciate that question. I've definitely been sitting with that for a minute. I guess I would say I am quietly optimistic and expecting, frankly, that he will leave. Now, the conditions around his leaving, I don't know. He's spiraling right now and trying to figure out how to sustain both his prominence and, to some degree, his legacy, and not doing it well, just my opinion. And so, as I reflect on it, we're in this really pivotal and critical time in our nation's history. Because I was curious also about, what happens if he doesn't leave. So I, peeked back in history, and to my knowledge, there's only one other time, and I believe it was Adams, but I'd have to just confirm that. But he just skipped. Dude just ghosted. He just said, I lost, I'm out, y'all figure it out. And they did. So I was like, okay, maybe that could happen. I think at some point, maybe I'm just overly optimistic that the Republican leadership will step up and lead him out in some kind of gracious, departure. But we'll see. It's an interesting time.
Yeah, we kind of launched right into politics, which I don't usually do. I guess we can kind of work our way backwards, because for some of your career has been involved with big, really large nonprofit organizations.
Yeah.
That are, that have a national presence. I don't know, maybe some international presence.
Sure.
Throughout your career, because I want to get into the specifics of your upbringing in your career, what has who's president really affected your work at a national level?
In particular moments, especially in my work in the United Way Worldwide Network, where I spent almost 20 years. And we can delve as deeply as you want to in the kind of career trajectory and path. But in that work, and most specifically, as we began to delve into the public policy agendas, that were about enabling and empowering communities and, deconstruction of some of the policy construction that existed. Yeah, it mattered who the president was and is. And so, while the network did not engage in partisan politics, certainly paying attention to policy and advocating and really mobilizing the network, the national network, 1,200 United Ways across the country, to ensure that, there's, reauthorization of SNAP, or, ensuring that, when Prop 8 was on the ballot, et cetera. So anyway, there've been a number of places where it has mattered who the president has been. Absolutely.
For my work, like the direct insertion hasn't been as connected, or what I should say, like our ability to move outcomes for the Black community has been difficult no matter who the president is. When Obama ran, you couldn't tell me nothing. Like in 2008, it was like
Right.
2008,
Right.
like it was like Christ arrived. That's really my grandma would hate that I said that, but like.
But I feel you. Yeah, I get your point. Yep.
Yeah, I was like so caught up, and I was like 22 right out of college. I didn't really care who was president before, but it meant everything to me. And then over the course of this presidency, I was like, what's happening?
Right.
So like the most singular important person, I would say, in terms of like having an impact and inspiring me, like Barack was, but the impact of his presidency, I question.
For me, part of it, just real quick, for me, part of it is, I had some of the same kind of feelings of, wow, finally, right? This is our moment. We're getting ready to turn stuff over and, right, really redistribute both wealth and access and power and, right, shift the whole dynamic. And, some of that was realized, a lot of it was not realized. And one of the things I gained a better appreciation for in those 8 years was just how tough that is, right? How tough that job, no matter who it is. Because, the stars just have to align right? Whether it's both in terms of who's holding power in each of the branches of government, and or what the political winds are at any given time, and how you seize that in the moment with the right policy move, right? It's a tough game. And I had these, hopeful aspirations that, Obama would just turn it all upside down. And a reality, at least in my view, is that he couldn't. And it was the political game, my opinion, and better than I, because you've been in it, where I've been, holding it and pushing it, which is it's a game of compromise, and it's how you move agendas, which means sometimes you push hard and other times you soften, you accelerate and you slow down, and so it's tough. It's tough. It's actually one of the reasons I've never run for public office. Yeah,
you got so much insight too. I'm glad we're talking. I'm gonna learn more, I think, over the course of this conversation. I want to talk about Kamala. Yeah, because I'm sure you probably met her more than I have. I
met her a few times. Yeah.
Okay. What's it like for you to see her? Do you remember your first time you met her?
First time I met her would have been 08, 09. Somewhere in there. Would have been 08, 09. And it was actually the very first time was actually Hydra's first campaign running for the school board.
Your wife is Hydra Mendoza, who was my former colleague on the board of education. Yeah.
Thank you.
Continue.
And so that was the very first time. And quite honestly, and I don't say that just because she is now where she is, what impressed me, one of the things, many things did, but one of the things that impressed me was her level of, and she and President-elect Biden hold this kind of characteristic and trait, which is a real sense of purpose and presence, right? Many folks in politics, quite candidly, are rarely actually not fully present. Right? They're physically present, but they're not really present. And when they are quasi present, they're present with an agenda, right? And what I experienced from her, and even the one time I met President-elect Biden, there is a sincere and genuine presence. And I think that's powerful in terms of leadership and leadership qualities. So that's what stood out for me. And then kind of watching and then having touch points along the path of her career. That was always true. And then she sought to leverage that to, live out her passions around changing things in community for, certainly Black folks, but also people of color and women and girls. It's been great to watch. And like everybody else, she's also been imperfect. So.
There it is. Yeah, as we all have been, and
Yes.
and I'll reserve my criticism of her right now because I really want to talk about Eric McDonnell and his upbringing. So, like, you grew up in San Francisco.
Yes, sir. Native San Francisco, born in San Francisco General Hospital.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I was Kaiser.
Okay.
All right. So, like, did you have siblings?
No, I'm an only child, single
Okay.
mom. Quick backstory. The reason that I am a native San Franciscan is because my mother fled Macomb County, Mississippi when she was 15. Said, I can't take it. I'm out. Came to San Francisco, sat literally with a distant cousin till she got on her feet. And, the rest, as they say, is history. So it was me and my mom, moms from day one. Grew up in the public housing in the Fillmore, in King Garvey. And that was the path.
Describe like the Fillmore growing up. Like, what was it?
Yeah.
Like
So for me, it was kind of two, big word, but not more than what I mean, kind of parallel or concurrent worlds in one. So on the one hand, because I'm living in public housing, I'm living what is not the dream of struggling to make ends meet. I've jokingly described how, long before, HBO had fight night, all I had to do was open the curtain, right? It was, stuff was going down like all the time. I mean, to the extent that, my mother, again, single mom, trying to make sure her son is safe and well. Dude, I had a hard time just getting out the door because she was like, no, you're not going. No, you're not hanging out. No, right. She was like all over me and early on enrolled me in, basically it was the nonprofit safety net in San Francisco that took care of me. It was the child care center, Audrey L. Smith. It was the after school program at Hamilton Rec and Park. That's where I played basketball. And then it was Columbia Park Boys and Girls Club, 16th and Valencia, where I was required to go every day after school until she picked me up. So that was the safety net. So there was that part of the world where there was this insular kind of universe of families that lived in our community where we were. Everyone knew everybody, families, the whole nine. And then just outside of that, when it got down to Fillmore's, where you began to experience the commerce of Black folks and stores and Chicago barbershop and Miyako's ice cream, and right, we were rolling, and we had Boom Boom Room, and I wasn't old enough to go there, but I knew that was ours, right? I knew right, I knew how we flowed, and it was so it was kind of that. Sometimes dichotomy was very, very real. And then in the larger scheme of things, watching the city evolve. So that whole property that is now the Safeway and the condominiums, that was rubble. That was just ground. Not that there was something. There was nothing. That's actually where I learned to play football. Because I had older cousins who lived down in Plaza East. And so they were like 7, 8 years older than me. So, they were big and strong and tough. And here I am, 11, 12 years old. I want to play with them. And they wouldn't let me. So so they were playing football, and they were playing football on gravel. So it wasn't even grass. It was gravel with rock and glass, all that kind of stuff. And so I'll never forget when I, got my cred to be able to play with them. So they said, fine, you want to play with us? Go out for a pass. So they, literally say, go deep. So I go deep. He throws it. I stretch out, catch it, and then I roll. I hit the ground, roll, arm gets all cut up. I'm gonna be honest with you, and now they're gonna find out. I was ready to cry, but I knew if I cried, they weren't gonna let me play no more. Right? So I just sucked it up, got back up, said, yeah. And from then on, they let me play. So there was nothing there. And so to watch that evolve, I also watched, it was also when I got exposed to the roles of Mary Rogers and Tamatra Scott, many of the other Black leaders in the community who were the stand in front of the bulldozer, you're not going to build nothing here kind of folk, which on the one hand inspired me, but I'll be honest, on the other hand, I also watched how the system marginalized them over time, right? Because they would be the ones who would walk in and stop a board of supervisors meeting, just like shut it down. And so, but what happened was what I watched over time. So by this time I'm 16, 17, starting to pay a little closer attention. And I see how they let them come in, do their thing, and then say, thank you very much, and then continue the bulldozer, right? And still build the property. And right, so that was for me, that was about, okay, that particular strategy, not that it doesn't work, there has to be more. And so for me, that became a question of what's the inside game and what's the outside game, and that we need them both. Mm-hmm. And so for me, part of the reason I went the path I went was because I really saw the need for the inside-outside game, that the outside game wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. It wasn't enough to agitate. It was necessary, but it wasn't enough. And so that really birthed my path. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll give it back to you, is early on, what started kind of my career was literally one conversation. And it wasn't even with adults, it was with kids. So I'm 17 years old. I'm working after school in this after school program of the Child Development Center I attended, right? As a young child. My mother had joined the board. And one day she came and said, hey, they're hiring. Do you want to work? I said, yeah, not really because I wanted the job itself, but they were giving me a paycheck. So I was like, okay, yeah, I got a paycheck. That's cool. So I was doing, what you would expect in an after school program, a little bit of recreation, a little bit of tutorial, that kind of thing. And I would regularly engage them in, or periodically, I should say, in just life conversations, right? So one day I get them in a circle, and it's about 10 to 12 of them in a circle, and their age range from 7 to 12, 13 years old, right? Nice range. Mm-hmm. What do you want to be when you grow up? Going around the circle, I want to be an actress, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a football player. And then I got to one young brother, and he said, I want to be a pimp just like my uncle. Right? And I got the giggles around the circle, and I said, hold on. I said, dude, talk to me. Why do you want to be a pimp just like your uncle? Now, I knew even before he said it, he was parroting what he saw. Who in his world was living large? His uncle. And his uncle happened to be a pimp, right? And so he said, they make lots of money, they drive bad cars, and they get all the girls. Like, he was 10 years old. And so I said, okay, I hear you. I wasn't going to diss his uncle. I said, let's talk about some positive ways, dude. You can make good money, drive a nice car, and find maybe a nice girl, right? Mm-hmm. That becomes your life partner. Mm-hmm. And right then and there, if you had asked me before that conversation what I wanted to do in life, I actually would have said I want to be an architect. I had gotten introduced to, mechanical drawing. I had my drawing board, my T-square, my protractors, and I was kind of headed down that path. I had some mentors and teachers who were guiding me. And right then and there, I decided this is what I want to do. He became my project. I want to expose you to a world that's bigger than what you're experiencing, because then and now, I believe young people want to be what they see. And if we can give them a fuller picture, they can really aspire to do great things. And so that was it. I stayed there, changed my major at City College from business administration to early childhood, got enough units and credits to become a teacher in the child development program. Fast forward, I became executive director of that agency and began to grow our work not only around the direct service of child development, mental health support services, then began to expand us into a partnership with the Children's Defense Fund and the Black Student Leadership Network, worked and partnered with Tony Lincoln in the early iterations of the mayor's office of Children, Youth, and Families before it was a department, and brought summer freedom schools to San Francisco, both in the Fillmore and in the Bayview, and then began to do even more active public policy advocacy, both locally and nationally, and then went to United Way and spent 20 years just continuing to drive that kind of work and really trying to, again, play the inside game. That was about shifting both internal culture and policy to kind of match and not necessarily mirror, but certainly facilitate some of the outside agitation. Last thing I'll say is I got a lot of heat for choosing the inside game.
I want to get into that. I want to get into that because you touched on I didn't want to pass over low before we keep going in that direction.
Absolutely.
You're a low alumni.
Proud. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And all the low alumni come at me kind of foul, passionately, I should say, very spiritedly on the Board of Education. and that they're not new to that. They're true to that, right? That's what they do.
Right.
My uncle also went to Lowell. and he's older than you. He now lives in Texas. He had a career in the energy sector. He worked for Chevron for several years.
Nice.
And you know, so all of these like I didn't know you came up under with you and just your mom. Is your mom still with us?
Yes, she is. It's interesting because I told you I'm born here because she fled Mississippi. Guess where she lives now?
Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Where Mississippi?
Blew my mind. She is now in Diamond Head, Mississippi,
okay.
With my stepfather. When I got that call that she was making that move, it blew my mind, like literally blew my mind, because I knew the origin. And I had my one and only experience in Macomb County, which in that experience, 10 years old, I vowed I would never go back there again. It was that bad. Right. So because I was there to see my grandparents. And so to fast forward and get this call, hey son, what's up, mom? We're moving south. I was like, okay, where you going? Mississippi. I'm like, wait, what?
Right.
And what I learned as I probed a little more with my mother is how many of her generation have done that. Right. They left, for all the reasons that they left, they fled. And now, in their senior years are returning. And for them, it's home, for better or for worse. And it's fascinating. I will confess, I still don't get it, but I appreciate that if it's what you call home, own it.
I haven't experienced the South that, my grandmother grew up in, or that, you often hear about in history books, and some of that is still there. Like when I go to some of the metropolitans in the South, I feel more connected there. Like when I go to New Orleans or Atlanta or Houston, I'm like it feels like way more. I mean, because being Black in San Francisco, and being Black at Lowell when you were coming up, I went to very good. So I didn't have all of that or whatever. But I think I see the appeal based on my travels there.
Yes.
But it's very like, I'm coming from a place where I have resources I can get around. I'm like, so we went over your career broadly, and you mentioned getting heat from the inside game. And so when, how I met you, I think the way I initially thought of you when I met you was like, he knows a lot of people and he understands systems, and you had like a big job, big job, understands systems of a lot of people. And with the nonprofit space, people don't really see it. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, people don't really see it with the same credibility as like corporate America. But like, you were chief operating officer at United Way, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's a big job. In your career, have you felt like you've had to stay quiet or like massage what you want to say, trying to like navigate and ascend within a large organization, like quiet your Blackness in order to like?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
So it does. It absolutely makes sense. And the answer is yes, sometimes, but not in ways that I felt inhibited or prohibited from representing what needed to be represented. Because most of my kind of massaging or nuancing both the what I did or how I do it was honestly more about tone and less about content, right? So I wasn't going to throw no tables. Like, again, I'm trying to play the inside game. I need you to hear me, right? And not be worried about me hurting you or, stopping your meeting or throwing the table over, right? So I was really clear about that. And yeah, I knew that there was this expectation that anytime I walked into a room, there was the quick read and assessment. Candidly, between you and I and everybody who ultimately sees this, the assessment was, which kind of Black are you? And I knew that walking into every room. And I made conscious decision so that wouldn't be a distraction for them, which kind of Black I wanted them to experience. Right now, the pushback I got from the outside, I got heat. I mean, when I first took the job, because when I was leading Audrell Smith Developmental, so the Child Development Agency, right, I was still kind of, recognized by Black folk and Black leaders in particular as part of the community, right? Soon as I took that United Way job, and I didn't start as COO, I grew into the COO role, right? As soon as I took the role, I was a sellout because I went to work for the white man, right? I went to work for that big white establishment, right? That was, speaking of what Chevron that you mentioned earlier, that worked with companies like Chevron to, drive resources into community. And I was deemed less Black and less down and less committed to community transformation. And early on, I was hurt and offended, quite honestly, right? And really tried to rationalize it and explain it and try to make it clear. I think it's necessary. We need an outside and inside game, right? And I want to make sure the dots are being connected, blah, blah, blah. And, but after about 10 years, I stopped trying to fight that fight. I just accepted, okay, we just have to agree to disagree. I know the value of this inside game because I was in a position at United Way to do two things of significance in my view. One, I was working both literally me interfacing with, and then my teams with both Fortune 500 companies and the millions and sometimes billions of dollars they were going to invest in community. I was also then interfacing with high net worth individuals across the spectrum. Again, same thing. And they were comfortable, say that differently, they were confident enough to say to this Black man, tell me what I should do with my money. Okay, I will, right? And so I gave them an agenda. And so, at its high point, we were investing in Black and brown communities, or not just in San Francisco, because we were 5 counties and in 7 counties by the time I left, was investing over $50 million a year just on the side of the money they gave directly to us to invest. And then another 100 that they invested directly, but they invested it based on what we told them. Candidly, I determined this is the value of the inside game. And at the same time, working, right, developing the policy agenda, ensuring that we were building coalition around the things that were important, both locally, statewide, and nationally. So, but I did quite honestly have to find my own resolve that this was the right move. And if it meant, certain circles I wasn't deemed down, I could live with that.
Yeah, there is an interesting pull, like trying to be down or trying to remain down, or like some people are the nighters of like black authenticity.
Yes.
Like, okay, you are in the, I call it like sometimes I talk reckless and like I say stuff that's kind of like, that doesn't make any sense, right? But I call it like the Black God. Like there's like a Black God that no one wants to be in violation of, but like if you do something like take a job, like marry a white woman, like you're violating the Black God, like you're like,
Yes.
you're an outcast from like the tribe or whatever,
The code. That's right. That's right.
But then no one, like there's no rules written down nowhere. But we all are trying to like fit into, not all of us, but some of us are, and then we get it from our families. Like, when I wanted to pursue academics, my family was like, why are you trying to be white?
Yep.
Or like, it's funny thing too, like when I meet Black women, like they automatically think I date white women. It's like, oh, you look like the type of dude that only dates white women.
Right. Right.
Just showing all the examples of like there's like this thing anyway. So
no, I feel that. So
yeah.
Just to look back just for a minute, because I know you've been wanting to go there. So all my years at Lowell, right? So all 4 years in the hood. Oh, that's that. You talk white, you act white, and you go to that white school, right? You're not down, right? So that was just all the time. And, my clapback was, first of all, I don't cede intellect and being articulate to white folk. They don't own that, right? It's not theirs, right? So I'm cool with being articulate, and I'm cool with being intellectual. It's you know, it's one of my strengths, one of my superpowers, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it for me and my people. But that was the debate all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and you know, not there's anything wrong with it, but just as an aside, I ain't never dated no white woman. You know, that's just not my flavor. But but if it was, so what?
Yeah. Well, it just speaks to like the perceptions that people will gather based on like, you know, like you mentioned, what type of Black are you when you were talking about walking into the room?
Yes.
And so there is like a read that you're doing within a professional setting that may be of people who are white or non-Black, or who are also Black and see you professionally, and they're trying to make that decision, or you're trying to help them make that decision. And then there's, you know, the thing within the Black community where that's also happening, right? And it's interesting how, with I think a certain level of ascension, you know, how the Black community will embrace some that they probably would have like deemed acting white in another situation. Like maybe Obama is like an example of that. Like, like he's ours. Like, you know, that's like, you know, but like he could have came up and he would have been in the same boat we in, thinking about the same stuff. Like I spoke to Deval Patrick once, and for people that don't know, he was the former governor of first Black governor of Massachusetts. We spoke on the phone, and we talked about that a little bit, like, you know, how he still does that when he goes in the rooms. One of the things I wanted to get into, not so much related to law. I think I'm losing it. I forgot what I was going to ask you.
So while you're trying to capture it, let me just offer one other thing. So there is still that dynamic of, you know, what kind of Black are you? And what's unfortunate to me is that one of the reasons it is, you know, folks like Obama get, you know, embraced is not until they reach this, you know, place of ascension. And then there's kind of merit and value in being that kind of Black, right? And that's just, again, in my opinion, that's just really, really unfortunate, because what is also true, and I don't know that we acknowledge this openly enough, that whether it's Obama, or you'd hear Bernard Tyson talking about it, or you'd hear Deval talking about it, one of the things, I don't care what kind of Black we portray ourselves as being, that is still true, is that we Black. And when it's time to get pulled over, and when it's time to get profiled, it don't matter, right? And it's unfortunate we don't not just acknowledge it for acknowledgement's sake, but recognize that reality, that as much as we try to, you know, segment ourselves, who's down, who's not, who's in, who's out, we one tribe on the, for white folks that's on the wrong side. So we'd be better off uniting, in my opinion, than trying to figure out who's in, who's out. And
I like what you said about letting go of trying to like fit that mode, and maybe some of that comes with age. At least it has for me. You know, I'm in my mid-30s now, and I'm just like, man, I'm trying to have the best day possible. I'm trying to like stay true to these values that I want to represent in the world, and I love who I am. You know, I love the upbringing that I have. I don't think I always had that relationship to it, like, you know, loving it or appreciating it. One of the things I did remember now, thanks for giving me that time, because I was going to bring up Malcolm X and how, and pretty much everybody from that, like from the nation, like Muhammad Ali came out of there, right? Malcolm came out of there, and that organization really gave them all of their talking points, right? And when they went out into the world, no one really questioned their Blackness, and they were hella articulate. but they were on this like activist, like damn America type of
right.
So those are the only examples of people that I know of that never really got questioned. And maybe it's because of like that activist framing that they had.
I think you're right in kind of that observation. And I would agree with you that part of the reason, you know, as you say, their Blackness wasn't questioned was because of their activist posture. And so for many, and I'll just include myself in the many of us who have been questioned, is because, you know, when I'm playing the inside game, I'm not holding an activist posture with intention. Right. It's not that I can't. It's not that I don't know how. Right. It's just I'm determining this is how you play this inside game. Right. And there's just so many who don't right, agree with that. And I'm just a believer that we need activists of all ilks and shapes and kinds along the entire continuum, right? And we need them in every room and outside of every room. We need, right, just a full-on assault and attack, right, on this, structural racism and injustice. And so I'm an advocate of, we need somebody there and somebody inside that room and somebody outside that room. And it's just unfortunate to me that, a lot of time is spent on justifying where folks are positioning themselves versus appreciating and valuing the fact that we need folks everywhere.
Yeah, that's that systems thinking too that, I've always appreciated about you. And so I know you're now no longer at United Way, and you are at least partially helping people evaluate and reform their systems. Like what does your current work look like right now?
Thank you for that. So a couple of years ago, formed what is now called Peacock Partnerships, which is my consulting practice, where I am doing, as you just said, system design and reform for organizations across sectors, as well as executive coaching and leadership development and training. And the kind of center or hub of all of that for me is two things. One is, for me, in terms of doing all of this work, this is me embodying my what I call the intersection of purpose and passion. I just believe that that's the intersection we all ought to be trying to get to, right? And we all, are on our path and journey. And part of it is we do what we have to do until we get to do what we want to do, right? But I believe the sooner we identify where that intersection is for us, we can then get on that path to get there, right? Versus kind of what many of us experience as this kind of circuitous route. And I'm not faulting anybody, that's just life. And so part of what I do in my work is help organizations identify their center of purpose and passion, and help leaders identify that, and then build the systems to both kind of stand that up as an organization or as a team, and then the systems that sustain it and perpetuate it and keep it moving. And so I therefore am excited every day to engage with clients and partners, because one, it's my own purpose and passion, and two, I really want to help them unlock it, because I believe and I love your opening around Monday and then the week, and then because I believe for me, it's if you can identify that intersection and then get on your path to get there, when you get there, then you're ruling the world, in my view. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I wish I could afford you, man. I want to get this. I want to get this this insight.
Let's talk. I have some quid pro quo relationships. It's all. We come up. We're born out of bartering. So
right.
We can talk about exchange. You cut my hair, I'll shine your shoes. So it's all good. We can figure something out.
What are some of the common issues you see, like within organizations? Like when I'm sure you have to go in and do a full assessment and then elevate what the issues are or whatever. But what are some common disconnects?
One of the things that I'm finding common across industries and sectors, so Fortune 500, higher ed, philanthropy, small nonprofit, a couple of common themes. One is there is, surprisingly to me, an inability on the part of many leaders to lead and engage in what I call courageous conversations. Courageous conversations are about ideas challenging other ideas in order to get to the best solution. Most of our conversations begin with a notion and a premise of winning and losing. My idea better than your idea, whether it's because of my position or just I think I'm smarter than you, right? And so many teams, therefore, never really have authentic, open, and engaging conversations that are hard to have, because for many of us, we embed our own self-worth and value in our ideas. And so when we put them on the table and someone steps on it, we feel personally stepped on. Right. I'll never forget, it's probably 25 years ago. I was in a meeting actually at McKinsey, and I was a guest there, part of this team. And I'll never forget, the leader of the team came in, we sat down, and he said to everyone in the room, just as a reminder, our premise here at McKinsey, we are soft on people and hard on ideas. So as we begin to engage in this discussion, it's not about title. It's not about taking things personally. We want to leave this room with the best solutions to the issues we're putting on the table. And I will tell you, Stevan, that was the most intense 90-minute meeting I have ever been in my professional life. It felt like, a 15-round title fight, because it was every idea was questioned and pushed on and challenged. Nobody got offended. Nobody was storming out of the room. Nobody was, throwing in the towel. Nobody was, using their power to say, no, it's going to go my way. It was all about the best idea, the best solution. Right. And I literally came out of that room going, whew, man, that was tough. And yet it was powerful. And so I remember leaving that going, that's what most teams are missing. And quite honestly, I've never experienced one other team that had that kind of environment. And so part of what I'm supporting teams to is have that conversation. And it begins with having a level of confidence in your own person, in your own voice, and in your own perspective, because then you're able to confidently put it on the table and not have your feelings go with it. Mm-hmm. Right. And because you're also clear on the goal. Right. So that's really common. The other thing that's really common, again, that I'm experiencing, I have experienced across sectors, is accountability, or the lack thereof, runs rampant, right? Just runs rampant. Folks are not held accountable, and at all levels of organizations, and they wonder why we're not high performing. When you begin to kind of study and appreciate some of the quote unquote leadership gurus and those that have studied organizations, Jim Collins talks about right people in right seats doing the right actions consistently, right? Well, what happens is, we don't get the right people in right seats because we don't have the right filters to bring in the right people. We then don't put them in the right seats, and then we don't even hold them accountable, right? So it's just a recipe, right, for challenges. And then when you have huge bureaucracies like schools and school districts, and right, it just gets lost in there, and you don't have high performing organizations. So anyway, those are probably the two biggest things. There aren't the courageous conversations, and there isn't kind of the consistent accountability that helps organizations and teams thrive.
Yeah, the accountability thing. I was, being on the school board, and we have a lot of institutional barriers that prevent accountability, like around, teacher tenure, or really like subjective views on what is relevant to success or not relevant, like people liking each other or falling out. So your job, it's like, or I should say, I want to give a bit of, the only caveat I would give is that maybe I don't understand the evaluation enough to not read it that way. You know what I'm saying? because this looks like you just like the person. Because when I asked for how it was determined, or what we're hiring around, or why somebody isn't being fired over the perpetual under performance of this group, or so it's it's very odd, interesting, and it's not just in the school board, the ability to be courageous and to help people accountable when you're in leadership. When I was running Mission Bit, and I've had to fire people or write people up, and it, it's like, it's not comfortable.
No,
but I'm doing it, and then just the transparency of it is really wanting it and not knowing how to initiate it for myself.
Yeah,
because just being completely open, I'm like, all right, I could ask my staff to review me, but I'm not going to do that.
right.
and I'm like chasing my board for an evaluation, and whenever they write that's not aligned with how I feel, I'm defending it,
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, it is. Yeah. So I get that.
Yeah. There's this, again, all of us need to kind of find our space and place of confidence where we welcome feedback, where we welcome, right, being checked, so to speak. I was just coaching just a couple of weeks ago, a senior manager in a higher ed institution, and she's got a team member who has been low performing for a while, right? By her own admission, she's been struggling for a long time. And so I said, so where's the accountability? Well, I've talked to her and I've tried to coach her. I said, yeah, the coaching is good, but where's the accountability? Because ultimately she needs to deliver or not. And she needs to be held accountable for that. Right. Yeah, you're right. I said, so here's another foundational piece I would invite you to appreciate and understand. You are not doing your team or the organization, rather, let me say that differently. You are doing your team and organization a disservice when you hold on to, coddle, and protect a known low performer. You say you're down for the company, down for the team, down for the organization, and you do that, that's contradictory. Secondly, you're doing her a disservice, because what her behavior says is one of two things. One, she can't or she doesn't want to, but in either case, she's not, which means potentially she's just in the wrong place. And you're doing her a disservice in keeping her here. You need to set her free to go and find her intersection of purpose and passion so she can be about being her best self. Because clearly she can't be her best self here. And that's okay. Right? That's not being critical of her. It doesn't fit, doesn't work. She was like, oh. So I said, yeah, you need to set her free. Because that was always the conversation I had with folks when it was time to fire them. Right? I'm setting you free. I really want you to be successful. It's just clear you can't be successful here for a whole bunch of reasons. Some is ours, some is yours, but we are where we are. And what I encourage you to do is, again, find that intersection and be about being your best self and find where that works for you.
You like a Harriet Tubman out in these streets.
Yeah,
I'm gonna liberate you.
I'm gonna liberate you. That's it. That's what's up. Because this isn't working for you, and it's certainly not working for us. It's interesting because it was actually the way. This is way kind of off subject, but so I spent 4 years in the Air Force Reserves. I did, my intent was to go active duty. That didn't work out, so I went reserves. And it was clear to me after I did basic training and tech school, etc., after about a year of doing my weekend warrior thing, that it just didn't work for me. And so I literally walked into the colonel's office. Can we talk? Sure, Airman, sit down. So I said, sir, with all due respect, this isn't working for me, which means I'm not working for you, and neither of us are getting value out of this. So if there is a path, right, to, again, liberate me, I believe we both win if we do that. And amazingly, he agreed. Put me in this status that where I didn't have to report anymore. I became temporarily inactive, I think was the official status. And then 6 years later, when my kind of time was up, I got this honorable discharge and I was done. And again, I just think that kind of liberation, dude, you have to know. I know you know because you experience it. How many people are trapped in jobs that are just not right for them? And I want to be about setting people free.
and you are.
Yes.
You are.
Yes.
I mean, that's really the concept behind what I was thinking about, like putting the show together. I wanted to make it for the people that hate their jobs, and then that they can see people that love what they do, and it can spark some type of move for them. But I think, like based on the interest of the people that are, or at least that are guests, the people that like what they do, I think it's really only for people that like what they do. Like the audience is people that like what they do because they appreciate that in other people, and the folks that don't like what they do for this is a broad stroke. It could be a lot of different reasons.
Sure.
But there is a tendency for inaction. Like you don't like what you do, so you're staying. So then like, why would you tap into a source about leaving if you're conditioned to stay?
That's right.
You know, it's like it's like a code. Like, so they have to be acted upon. And like I had a cousin who was a Marine, and he did some work with the railroads after he left the service.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, yeah, I fire somebody every week. And I was like, damn, why you so mean? And he's like, they fire themselves. And then that stuck with me. I was like, you fire yourself. You know, like you fire yourself.
Yes, you know? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like Donald Trump just fired himself, you know?
Yes. He actually had every opportunity to win.
Uh-huh.
And he fired himself.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Absolutely agree. Yeah. And you're right in terms of, you know, who might be drawn then to, you know, an audience of your program. And so part of what I've been thinking a lot about is how to reach that next kind of, you know, if this is the circle, right? How to reach that next ring, right? Where they're stuck, but they have, you know, they're kind of peeking over the fence, right? They have interests, but they feel stuck, right? That's kind of the space that, I mean, I certainly want to work in the center of the circle, absolutely. And I want that next ring of folks who have really great potential, really great capacity, and they feel stuck. And my observation is that it's one part kind of lack of confidence in themselves and their agency. And then sometimes it is very fundamentally about their financial well-being, right? Mm-hmm. You know, they took that role and job early on because they needed to, and then they start making a little more and making a little more. And now they've got a lifestyle that's dependent upon that, and they're fearful of taking a leap anywhere else. And 20 years later, they're going, I'm still here. It's not what I really love doing, but, you know, pays the mortgage and, you know, sends my kids to school. And I get that. So I'm not at all being critical of it. I just believe there's more. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that one isn't a compromise of the other.
We're coming to the top of the hour. I have a rapid fire section. I want to riff on that some more because like it's so important. And I hope that we're going to put on the screen a way to get a hold of you. Do you want to list it out now? How do people contact you to learn more about?
Absolutely. So best way to learn more about is www.peacockpartnerships.com. So that's the website. And yeah, that's the best way to kind of track me down.
Great. All right. So rapid fire. Are you ready?
Yes. Go.
Do you meditate?
Yes.
What personal weakness can you forgive in someone?
Lack of empathy.
What's one book you would recommend?
That's only tough because there are so many. One that I would recommend it's born out of my faith foundation. It's called Purpose Driven Life.
That's Warren, right?
Yes.
Do you have a motto?
Be you, be great. It's not about comparing yourself to others. We have a wrong scheme, I would argue. It's about greatness compared to other people, other things, other organizations. That's a measure. It's not the measure. I believe if you're being your best self, then that's your ability to be you and be great.
Last and final question. Your house is on fire. The family and the pets are out. What's three things you grab?
Keys to the car, my wedding picture of me and Hydra, and my bicycle.
We didn't get into the LA trip. I forgot about that. There's so much. There's so many depths and avenues. I just happen to know more about Eric because watching his life. We didn't get into your marriage or your kids or anything.
Right.
But that is the top of our hour.
Appreciate it.
Eric McDonnell. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you for doing Cook on Monday Morning.
Appreciate you holding this space. Good to be with you.
Peace. And thank you for listening to another episode of Cook on Monday Morning. At Cook on Monday Morning, we are building lives that make us excited about Monday morning. We believe that if you can own Monday morning, you can own the week. If you can own the week, you can own the year. And if you change your year, you can change your life. I'd like to thank Mr. McDonnell again for taking the time to join me for this week's episode. It was really great to go back and forth with him, hear about his experience building a career, thinking about how he thinks about race, how he's navigated race, and the type of professional support he's given to people from all different backgrounds to ensure that teams are strong and are driving impact, and we're all holding ourselves accountable. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. I hope you learned a lot. Thank you again for listening, and thank you for subscribing. Please do so if you haven't already. I'm grateful for your support. Please share the podcast with a friend. Also, help us grow this community of doers. Please take a minute to also rate and review the podcast on Apple. Leave a comment on YouTube. It really helps people hear about and find what we're doing here. If you're interested in starting your own podcast, I wrote an article. It's called How to Start a Podcast During the Pandemic. You can check the article in the description box if you want to see how I started this one, the equipment we use, some book recommendations that'd be helpful to consider. Check that out when you get a chance. Cook on Monday Morning is a product of the Luther Harris Holding Company. We work in partnership to create solutions that drive impact. We build strategic partnerships between businesses and government. We recruit diversity talent into high impact roles, and we help companies drive impact in the places where they do business. If you'd like to learn more about that, feel free to email me, info@stevoncook.com. I'd like to thank the people that make our podcast possible. Our videographer, David Topete. Thank you, David. Our copy editors, Fernando Encico Marquez and Devin Sketchinger. Thank you both also. I get up every morning with the intention to create value and showcase my love to the people that keep our cities moving. You are our teachers, garbage collectors, school lunch workers, custodians, social workers, fire workers, police officers, EMT workers, bus drivers, and nurses. You are our employers, the people helping create jobs and keeping our economy growing. You are our gig workers, stocking our shelves, driving our ride shares, delivering our food. To all of you, this podcast is for you. You live in places like San Francisco, Oakland, Richmond, Antioch, San Mateo, Los Angeles, Dallas, Houston, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Miami, Orlando, the Carolinas, Virginia Beach, Milwaukee, Kansas City, Cleveland, Detroit, Harlem, Brooklyn. Shout out to all of our listeners also on the continent and around the world, Nigeria, Ghana, Jamaica, Kenya, and Ethiopia. To all of you, this podcast is for you. This message is touching the world and will continue to do so because of you. Until we meet again. Peace, and we out.